from Appalachian Mountain. It is Data Day. It is the day that the United States Social Security Administration releases the official list of the most popular baby names for children born in the United States between January 1st and December 31st of 2016. It's like Mardi Gras and Christmas morning and the Super Bowl all wrapped into one. It's just the most wonderful day of the year. So let's dive in and let's talk about what we learned this morning. First of all, the big headline, it's always the top 10 baby names, and this was a really boring year for the top 10. Noah is still number one for boys. Emma is still number one for girls. No surprises. In fact, on the girls' side, the top 10 names, a few of them swapped places. Charlotte moved up, Emily moved down, but it's the exact same 10 names that we looked at last year. So we're not going to talk about those. I'll let you find those online and be curious to hear if you do have any thoughts about, what's still holding on to the top 10 and what you think is going to be on its way out soon. On the boys' side, we had one name change. Alexander left the U.S. top 10 after many, many years, and Elijah took its place. Now, I have to say this. We're looking at a moment in time where the number one name for boys is Noah, and Elijah is moving into the top 10. The way that we think about an appropriate sounding boy's name has just changed dramatically over the last couple of generations. Once upon a time, if you look at baby boomers and the greatest generation, they were Bob and Bill. They were really short, strong sounds. And now we're favoring boys' names that are longer, softer. It's hard to say that they're not traditional because, of course, they're Old Testament names, so they're not new, but they are different. And I think that signals a lot of the freedom in naming in general, and specifically in naming a son that we enjoy in 2017. So that's a good thing. Moving on, it's always fun to talk about names that are rising. One of the things that I do on the site, AppalachianMountain.net, every year is I look at the raw data. So I look at the actual numbers of births and the change in the number of children receiving a name in any given year. Well, what's the big deal? Sometimes what looks like a really dramatic rise in rank, from the 57th most popular name to the 41st most popular name, is actually kind of small when you look at the numbers underneath it. And sometimes a name that looks like it's holding steady, it only moved up one or two places, actually there's a huge number of births that are fueling that rise. And it's just because rank doesn't tell you everything about a name's use and popularity. So for the last 2 years, I've looked at the raw data, and for the last 2 years, the fastest rising name for boys has been Oliver. Now, I haven't dug into the data just yet to know if Oliver is still the fastest rising name for boys, but I can tell you that it rose in use from the 19th most popular name to the 12th most popular name. That is over 1,300 more baby boys named Oliver in 2016 than in 2015. So it seems pretty likely that that's still going to be a fast gaining name when we look at the data. The other two boys' names fastest rising from 2015 were Mateo, spelled M-A-T-T-E-O, and Grayson, spelled G-R-A-Y. And those two names continue to rise as well. Whether or not they're the fastest, we'll have to wait and see. But they're definitely on their way up. Expect to meet many more boys named Oliver, Grayson, and Mateo in the next couple of years. On the girls' side, the three fastest rising names in 2015 in terms of raw births were Mia, Hazel, and Alexa. Mia and Hazel look like they're still in contention. Mia is technically flat at number 6, but that doesn't mean that there wasn't an increase in the number of births. We'll have to take a look and see where that falls. Hazel actually was up, so again, Hazel is definitely a name that's trending and going places. Alexa, on the other hand, fell in use what looks like it's going to be pretty significant. And the fascinating part about this is that it seems like Alexa was boosted in a big way by that, oh gosh, I don't know what to call it, that home services gadget where you could say, Alexa, order milk, or Alexa, play my favorite song. And so we've had all these stories about women named Alexa and how they've interacted with these devices and how it's kind of been challenging because you're saying your daughter's name and it thinks that it's actually asking you to do something on the app. I'm revealing how little I know about the Alexa device right now. But anyway, big pop culture story that it went up, big pop culture story that it's coming down. So we'll have to look at the numbers and see, but Alexa definitely fell in use. Now, speaking of pop culture, this is important. Lorelei. Lorelei spelled Loreley, and Lorelei spelled Lorel. Oh, I said that wrong. Lorelei and Lorlai. It's like a spelling bee. But anyway, both spellings of the name Lorelei did gain in 2016, but not a lot. But here's what you have to remember. We're sitting here in May of 2017. We're almost halfway through the next calendar year. But the data that we're looking at is actually kind of from a long time ago, right? So it feels like the Gilmore Girls revival was a big story. Surely the name should have gone up more, but not so. The additional episodes of the Gilmore Girls that streamed on Netflix streamed over Thanksgiving of 2016. So that was pretty late in the game for the data set that we're looking at. What that means is that it's perfectly reasonable to not see a big bump in the number of Lorelei's just yet. There just hasn't been time for that to influence expectant parents. If you're looking at 2016, up through September, October, the Gilmore Girls revival was in the headlines, but it wasn't everywhere. So 9-10 months of the year, it wasn't influencing parents' decisions in a big way, the way that it was towards the end of the year. So we're going to have to wait until May of 2018 to see if Lorelei really got a huge boost from the Netflix revival of the series. On the other hand, we can now confidently say that Star Wars has given us a new name. It's Kylo. Kylo debuted in the US Top 1000 in 2016. And when you look at the timing, it's a very different story from Lorelei. We met the character Kylo Ren. He's a bad guy in the most recent installment of the Star Wars series, movie 7, right? Movie 7. We know he's going to be back in probably 8 and 9. And the character was introduced when the movie debuted in the middle of December 2015. So that's a good example of a pop culture name that's had a whole year to bake, to influence parents, to kind of get on our radar and to go from saying like, Kylo, that's crazy, to Kylo, that's my baby's name. So that's what it takes. It does take time for these things to show up in the rankings. Speaking of showing up in the rankings, let's talk about names that have debuted in the US Top 1000. There are always a couple dozen for boys, a couple dozen for girls. I think it's usually around 40 some, give or take. But I want to talk about just a couple because they're ones that I predicted would debut in the US Top 1000 this year. I don't have a crystal ball. In fact, I got more wrong than right. But for the moment, let's focus on the ones that I got right because I know these are names that a lot of you love out there. So, first of all, Fox came in at number 746 on the charts. Fox is sort of the best of River and Max mixed together. And I'll tell you that I knew Fox was a lock because just a couple weeks ago, a friend texted me and said that a colleague of hers had just named her baby boy Fox. And I live in Washington, D.C. It's a really cool town, but it can be kind of a conservative town in terms of naming. So when I start hearing really cool, edgy names that I associate with, Brooklyn and cool neighborhoods in Los Angeles pop up in Washington, D.C., I think that name, it's caught on. Also making the list, Harris, number 967. We've got Harrison and Hendrix, and of course Henry in the US Top 1000, so really natural to hear Harris joining that club. Next, Shepherd. Shepherd came into the charts at number 863 this year. Now I should say that the spelling of this name that is now ranking is Shepherd, Shepherd. Shepherd spelled Shepard is also gaining in use, or it has been gaining in use over the last couple of years, but it's the Herd spelling that has been more popular. It's a great occupational name. It's kind of gentle, kind of strong. It's got a really strong spiritual underpinning, a lot of meaning. So I'm sure that that explains why a lot of parents are really looking at this as an appealing name for their sons. So that's the boys. Moving on to the girls, Louise is in the US Top 1000. And if you remember last year, Louisa made the Top 1000, returned after many, many years' absence. So not a big surprise to find Louise right behind. Great classic name, kind of strong, kind of retro, lots of great nicknames. Love Lulu and Lou. So not surprised to hear that one make the charts. Behind that, Mavis. And let's just talk about pop culture for another minute, because Mavis was sort of this fusty, dusty name. You know, for a lot of parents, they thought of like Mavis Beacon teaches typing, like this home study class that you learned how to type on, or you know, other older associations like that. And then along came Hotel Transylvania. They gave the name Mavis to this adorable animated teenage vampire voiced by Selena Gomez, and all of a sudden we started seeing Mavis in a really different light. The character was celebrating her sweet 16 in the first movie. In the second movie, she had fallen in love and gotten married and had a baby. So we just really started to see Mavis as this fresh, fun name that fit with choices like Ava. So Mavis is back in the Top 1000. Not a surprise. Been waiting for that one. Also on the girls list, Poppy. Poppy made the charts at 747. It is a big name elsewhere in the English-speaking world. It's never really caught on in the U.S., even though we love, you know, Daisy and Lily and all of these other floral names. The reason, I think in certain parts of the U.S., people call their grandfathers Poppy. And I will say this is actually what some of my younger cousins called my step-grandfather. So even in my family, I've heard it used as another term for like grandpa. And that does change the way you think about the name. It kind of rules it out for a lot of families. But it's big in the UK. Poppy, obviously a flower name that is associated with remembrance and has its own significance in terms of meaning. And also we've had a few celebrities use it. Jenna Bush Hager has a Poppy, Nate Berkus has a Poppy. So we've just started to hear the name pop up more and more. And also Poppy, Pop. I think just we're really in love with P names right now, you know, Piper and Penelope. So there are a lot of reasons why this one's trending. And then lastly, save the best for last, Sylvie. If you follow AppalachianMountain.net, you know that every year I do this crazy March Madness baby names bracket kind of competition. Y'all are good enough to come and vote and choose your favorite names. And 2 competitions ago, Sylvie took the trophy. It was Appalachian Mountain site users' favorite name. So I've been waiting for Sylvie to crack the Top 1000. It just seems like an obvious. We've got Ava and Ivy and Sophie, so how can we not have Sylvie? Well, now we do. It's in the Top 1000. So, wow, that was a lot. Okay, back to the data. I want to dive back in and find some new things to go ooh, and that's interesting and to write about. So, love to hear from you. You know, what were the biggest takeaways from the charts? Were there any names that surprised you? Did your favorite names go up in use, and is that a bad thing or a good thing? So, tell me. Can't wait to hear what you think about the new most popular baby names in the United States data. See you later.